Yeah, there was a lot talked about in the Act 2 and Act 3 reveal stream, seeing as though it's more than likely that at the end of this episode, we will either be getting an announcement on the delay of Frontiers, which is just speculation, so but it wouldn't surprise anyone, or, we'll be getting stuff revealed about Frontiers, so that's why all of this was released, and that's why it feels like a lot, and it truly is a lot. But we'll get into why that is the case. And before we get into the video, I'm going to link the full stream if you want to go watch it for yourself before coming back and listening to my thoughts on it, so you can form your own opinion, whatever, and watch it yourself. And also, if you are new to the channel and maybe you watch some of my previous videos, please consider subscribing, as 98% of people who watch these videos are not subscribed. I would appreciate it a lot, but without further ado, let's get into the details. So we're getting Court of Blades, which is kind of like Court of Orcs, except Court of Orcs, if I remember correctly, I mean, it's been years since that was played, literally a decade, right? So I think it was mostly just in the area where the portal for King's Fall is, but we're actually going into that portal to go to different places. The ones that we know of right now are Io and Europa, with probably a few different arenas to come out eventually. There are going to be certain mods, kind of like the boon system in the Nether, that you can use to synergize with your build, continuing the roguelite-ish experience that we've had with most of this Heresy content. And some mods, I think they gave an example of one that is very similar to Sunbraces, with ability regen, which is cool. It sounds cool. There will, of course, be an expert version of this activity. That is the only place where you can get adepts and shiny versions of the new weapons. Those weapons consist of the new Strand Glaive, which is called Refusal of the Call. We will also be getting the Mira Imago SMG, a kinetic slot SMG. The new Anemonesis.
Okay, don't hurt yourself.
Anemonesis? I think I said that right. Which sounds really, really cool. The origin trait for these weapons allows you to not necessarily need Archer's Tempo, which really makes me think that they should just, give all bows Archer's Tempo baked in to make them a little bit more viable. But maybe that'd be a little too crazy for some bows. Just a thought though, because this bow seems like it's gonna be little baby lemon essentially. Of course, you were able to get this bow and the fusion as well, I think, at the beginning of this episode, because there was a bug. I think I have one sitting in my vaults that isn't that great, but repulsor destabilizing seems like that will be fun. There's also a heavy burst sidearm that will be coming as well. That is arc with Volt Shot, so that will be definitely interesting as well. A lot of good weapons there, and I'm very excited for just about every single one of them. You will be able to get most of these weapons, actually I think all of them will drop from Court of Blades, so make sure you're doing that if you want to target farm those, and I believe they will also be added to the Tome of Want, so that you can target farm them a little bit as well, so love to see that. If you're wondering for story vibes, this whole activity is just Oryx putting us to the test, trying to prove that we are ready to take up the mantle of the Taken King, whereas Xivu is, the opposite of that, trying to kill us essentially, and she wants Oryx back. And Savathun is very indifferent to all of this. She's like, come on, can we just go do anything else? This doesn't matter anymore. Let's move on. You have 3 different perspectives, and one of them is very heretical, like Savathun's. Yeah, see how that works into the title? It's kind of fun. It's not that funny. The Barrow Dyad quest will release 2 more Catalyst perks for Act 2, with Target Lock and One for All, which I'm very happy that both of those perks are being dropped sooner rather than in Act 3. Which, if you're wondering what those perks will be, Act 3 will have Hatchling and High Impact reserves. So there's that. I do think that there is some good with this system. I know some people might not like this, like maybe they're looking forward to High Impact or Hatchling or whatever. but I think it's still better than waiting until the end of the act to do this exotic mission. It's the major drop for the end of the episode, and you have to just do it over and over and over again. Because I did complain about that quite a bit in Revenant, just having to do the exotic mission multiple times in one sitting or 1 week, and it's not enjoyable. But, you know, doing the mission for the first time is a great experience. And now, you know, we'll probably have to go back in it for these Catalyst perks, and then once more in Act 3, which I think spacing that out does feel a lot better than just doing it again and again. But this does give people a reason to come back, and I would argue that Barodiad as it is pretty good. I think with One for All or Target Lock, it's just going to be so much better. How much better? Maybe not crazy good, but it's going to be decent and certainly fun to mess around with. So again, One for All in Target Lock in Act 2, and High Impact and Hatchling in Act 3. For this act, we're getting some Trace Rifle perks. I believe we'll probably see the specific ones and what they do in the TWID. So if you want to go check those out, I would go there. As of me recording this, the TWID isn't out yet, so that's why you won't see a link here. Just go to bungie.net and it should be the first thing that pops up. If it's not up yet, it will be sometime Thursday. It might just be a longer one because there's so much information here. But Trace Rifle stuff is coming in Act 2, Overload Trace Rifle, and some stuff to increase the potency of traces. And then in Act 3, we're going to get a bunch of rocket artifact mods. So, as in Vengeance, which is already really, really good, that's just going to be ridiculous in Act 3. And another way to access Woven Mail through the artifact as well in Act 3. Also, coming in Act 3 will be refreshes to the bosses for both Court of Blades and Nether, which is nice. I kind of wish we were getting that in Act 2, because the Nether bosses have gotten quite stale at this point. But I think the point here is that most people are going to be playing Court of Blades in Act 2, or at least that's the theory, right? Whereas in Act 3, you know, just a little refresh for both, so that you go back to see the new bosses, and there will also be new pressure tests. As of right now, we only have the one pressure test, which is to destroy the blights. So we'll see how that pans out, what kind of interesting thing they do there, because this pressure test is so boring and not really engaging. So we'll see if they come up with a better one or a harder one. New Sunless Cell Strike. It will not be a la cool, it'll be someone else, but it will take place in the same area. At least that's what they seem to have alluded to, at least. Guardian Games will be back as of March 11th with a new Trace Rifle. It's going to have Jolting Feedback, Detonator Beam, Overflow, Eddy Current, a whole host of good perks, as well as a new Boss Rush mode for Guardian Games. They didn't really go into details, but I'm sure, again, that will be in the TWID. You'll be able to earn some of this armor through Bright Dust from Guardian Games as well. It's all Gladiator themed. It looks cool. I don't know how much Bright Dust it's going to be. But honestly, I don't see myself spending actual money on this stuff. So it is cool to have the option of Bright Dust, but I do advise you to only buy this if you're actually going to use it. I speak from experience of buying stuff with Bright Dust and, you know, not using it. So, yeah, but most of the time Bright Dust, it's so abundant in the game, at least compared to years past, that if you were to spend some, you can just farm in-game ways to get it, which is cool. Returning weapons include the Hullabaloo with the Rolling Storm. You're going to also have a chance to get the title with Repulsor destabilizing. Terrazibos is getting Tear as well, which might be fun if Scout Rifles are ever good for some reason. And last, but certainly not least, this is the juicy stuff. So we are getting a Pantheon-esque dungeon-themed event, and it is astonishingly interesting to see what this event has to behold. The dungeons that will be involved in this, it seems as though they will be featured weekly, with Spire of the Watcher, Prophecy, and Ghost of the Deep being the dungeons featured. I know everyone's already complaining about the traversal part on Ghost of the Deep, when in reality, let's be real, the first encounter of not just ghosts, but some other dungeons as well, it's not engaging. It's so repetitive and so long for no reason. I genuinely think that Samuma might take less time than the first encounter. And there's no way to make it go faster, which some dungeons there are. I think Sundered Doctrine is somewhat of an example of that if you know lens placements, but still, if you're soloing something like Sundered or Ghost, it is a nightmare to do those first encounters. Not because it's hard, but because it's not engaging, right? You're doing the same thing 4 times in a row, and it's so long, right, that maybe you make a mistake because you're falling asleep doing the same thing 4 times in a row. It's not fun, but yeah, if you were to cut that into half, and you only had to do that twice, maybe it would feel too short, but it would definitely feel a lot better. It would make the rest of the dungeon feel a lot better. But sorry, that was a little tangent there. There will be 4 weapons from each dungeon reprised. They will all have a shiny version, which I have to admit looks so dope. It's probably my favorite shiny aesthetic so far, because, you know, the Brave weapons are cool, they're kind of gold and stuff. And the aesthetic of Heresy weapons are awesome as well. I just don't know if I'm a fan of the green and gold that much, personally. If you are, good for you. They're all pretty cool looking, but, you know, there's only, like, 3 that are good right now, so... but this galaxy-themed moving shader that it has is so cool. I hope we get a chance to get this shader at some point down the line. Maybe it's part of the seal or the title for this event. But yeah, this is awesome. I think the stasis waveframe from Ghost was quite literally one of the worst weapons in the game. Not because stasis or waveframes are bad, but simply because of the perks it had. None of them were good. They were all bad. And it has chain reaction now. It still has demo. I think it got Envious on there. It's got a whole bunch of perks, which seems really, really cool. Plus new origin traits, which I think we only saw 1. I think it might be the same across all. It was something along the lines of reloading this weapon collects ammo within a certain area or something like that, which is a cool idea. We'll see what people are able to do with that. You will be able to attune these weapons a la Into the Light, so that you can target farm them as well in case there's one you really, really want over other weapons. And this is an awesome thing, and I hope they do this for raids, because it would really make raids awesome as well. But there's going to be kind of like an explore mode. I can't remember the name of which I think it was explore mode, but it is essentially guided games / Sherpa mode, or, you know, doing a campaign for the first time. You get little tips and tricks. That's essentially what this is, telling you how to do the dungeon. That way you can go run in explore mode, maybe with someone you're Sherpa-ing through a dungeon, kind of let them figure it out for themselves, and just give them hints and maybe little tricks to do to make things go faster. Or, you know, do an explore mode and then, you know, do your tips and tricks on the next one so they don't get overloaded with information, right? Alongside this, and this is why I mentioned Pantheon, there will be an ultimatum mode, which is super hard contest level activity, and it will be scored, but the score is not based on, you know, kills or your damage or whatever else may be. It is solely based on staying alive. The more you stay alive, the better rewards you're going to get, because you're going to have a higher score. There's also going to be a Notswap thing, where if you swap certain things in an encounter, it will just drain all of your abilities. So I do think that some hot swaps will still work, like sanguine swaps if you're a warlock will still be pretty good, I think, unless it messes with ammo. Sorry, reading the Notswap perk right here. So swapping exotic armor, kinetic weapons, and energy weapons drains all ability energy. Now, at first I thought this was to target sanguine swaps, because it's quite literally one of the best things to do in the game, but it's just draining your ability energy, which if you do a swap from, let's say you're popping a well, and then you're swapping to Arc Prismatic for Queenbreaker, you are still going to have your ammo, you're still going to have your weapons, as long as the loadouts have the same weapons on them, right? Your abilities are already draining if you do this swap, right? It just sucks if you're doing a swap from, you know, a neutral game exotic that does really well at ad clear to, let's say, Kyros, right? You're going from Synthos or a Hoyle Synthos class item to actual Synthos or Kyros, right? That is where this will hurt you, because you won't have your abilities. You won't have your super. So I kind of get this. You know, it's gonna punish you. Not really punish you, because Kuros, let's be honest, Kuros is actually really strong, and you kind of do want to use it in neutral game because the bonus you get from melee kills on your super energies is really nice, and for quick damage phases, or when you're, let's say in something like Akthar, you're on ad clear, you're gonna get your super back pretty fast if you keep Kuros on. With Hoyle and Syntho's class item, maybe not so much, but I guess it really depends on the encounter and whatnot. And really the goal of this isn't to punish players for not swapping. The goal of this is for you to accept the weaknesses of the build that you use. And you know, you have a true support, you have a true damage person, and you have someone like in between doing whatever that may be. I think the funny thing though is that, again, this really isn't going to affect the strongest thing, which is Sanguine swap, but it will affect some other swaps out there that do exist. So I don't think this is that big of a deal. Some people might make it seem like a big deal. It's just not. There will also be 5 new emblems for this event. I assume they are pertaining to the dungeons, of course. An event exclusive title, which they have not released the name yet. And last, but okay, it might be the least, but it does seem cool, this Brig versus Drake PvP mode, which seems like Diet Titanfall 3, which I wish it was out already. I wish that would happen, but it's called Heavy Metal, and it looks cool. I don't think I'll be in that playlist that much personally, but yeah, I mean, it's definitely a cool idea. It definitely gives Combined Arms vibes, and it would be super cool to have like a big team battle playlist in Destiny now, with the Drakes and the Briggs and the Kendricks and the I'm sorry, that was a bad joke, but I saw someone post that and I couldn't resist, because you know, we have Drakes, but the Briggs should be Kendricks, right? Okay, I'm sorry. Anyways, it would be cool to see that though. You have Pikes and the Cabal vessels, or whatever they're called. I can't remember the name of that. It'd be super cool to have that, I think. And you know, maybe you have a Guardian grappling to a Pike to hijack a Brig. Like, in my head, it looks so cool, but man, would it take them a long time to put something like that together. But I think it'd be worth it. That's my opinion. Anyways, yeah, a lot to unpack. There's a lot of content here, and finally, which I said at the beginning of the video, we're gonna get into why that is. And genuinely, I think it's just because time has caught up with us now. We were wondering, you know, where was all this content, or some people might be wondering. I know how this cycle works. They put out a decent amount of content, right? And Echoes and Revenant, it's not a crazy amount, right? But for seasons, I would say it's generally what we expect, right? Exotic mission, new strikes, new story stuff, and that's about it, right? That's a season's worth of content, right? All that extra dev time that isn't put into the seasons because there's not as much content is taken and put towards the end of this cycle. That way, once the expansion is about to come out, you know, the numbers are high, and that's what happened with Into the Light. It was the best piece of content outside of an expansion that Destiny had received in years, and I think the reason Final Shape was so successful, despite not meeting the internal revenue stuff, was because Into the Light was so great, and people had generally a good sentiment of the game at the time, which meant more people stuck around to try out Final Shape, and a lot of people didn't regret sticking around for once. So I think they're trying to do the same thing here with Rite of the Nine, as well as this Explore mode stuff, which is so nice for the new player experience. We need more of this stuff in the game. And hopefully they do all of the dungeons eventually, all of the raids, maybe even some exotic mission content, which might be pushing it a little bit. That stuff is supposed to be secret anyways. But, you know, raids, generally speaking, you have guides that are out there on YouTube anyways that tell you how to do the raid. So why not just have it in game? That way it's more accessible. to the more casual player or someone who's just starting out, and they can go and do this stuff without that much of a hassle. And it makes it easier for people to get into solo content, which is such an awesome thing to do. I think solo content is some of the most fun you can have in Destiny, outside of dungeon experiences and raid experiences, as they are designed to be experienced, which is mostly in a full fire team. But of course, also most dungeons are designed for solo players, and while raids are certainly not designed for low mans, people still figure it out because they're insane and really good at the game. So this inevitably works because this cycle rather works because people go play other stuff when the lesser seasons are out, or the stuff that just, the content isn't as high as Heresy, and then they come back and they have so much to do that it's a little overwhelming. But for the more dedicated players, it's a joy, and I'm excited. I'm a little apprehensive because I know there's probably going to be a decent amount of bugs in Act 3, and probably in Act 2 as well. That's kind of the dark cloud hanging over all of this. That's the expectation now with each release. It doesn't matter if it's an event or a season or an expansion. We just, as a community, expect the bugs, and it sucks. And I don't want this to be the case. There is a surface level, I think, that exists of bugs that you're okay with, that you can deal with. But more recently, it's just been way too many bugs that break way too many things. And I think a great example is, of course, that Zoetic Lock set, the first boss of Sunder Doctrine, has yet to be fixed still. And I know it might be a complex issue. I don't code, I don't work on games, and I know Bungie is severely understaffed in this area and other areas as well. So it doesn't surprise me that we're a month into this dungeon being out just about, and it's still not fixed. And I can just imagine what kind of issues the game will have when all this stuff comes out. But there's nothing I can do except say, Bungie, please do better. And this isn't directed at the devs. Most people know who I'm talking about, right? But anyways, that's it for me. Thanks for listening to my TED Talk, and let me know what your thoughts are on all of this stuff that is coming out in Acts 2 and 3. And I'll see you guys in the next one.